what I'm hearing a lot, we're talking a lot of hypothetical situations because maybe we don't have kids that we've identified this way or that way yet. So what would I do? And that's when I said to the group in the back, like, that's where the forethought comes in that I mentioned, like thinking through everything that you're gonna do in case. I know that even when I was telling them I take my kids to the beach. All right, so how far from the parking to the beach? Is there a bridge? Who's gonna fall off of it? Who's gotta have what hand? Even from our students at school walking from the classroom to the playground, who needs what? Who's gonna need what? Again, I definitely see a need to maybe streamline some processes, providing an opportunity that's specifically directed or designed to connect parents with who their leader is gonna be and have this conversation so there's no in passing, I'm distracted, you have my full attention conversation on the upfront. Mr. Morgan mentioned the fact that we do have a wonderful special needs ministry, and we don't want to discourage kids from being part of that if they're more comfortable there by any means. So how do we marry these two situations? I mentioned maybe having kids that want to be part, potentially come in and visit for a little bit, and see how they feel about that and how, if that is something they for sure want to do, or maybe making that an option in that regard. But I definitely see where we're going to have to put some things maybe in place to enable ourselves to do this a little easier, especially with connecting with the parents and finding out the specific needs, and understanding everything we need to understand. So I want to throw that out there before you.
Okay, so the group would like to bring their thoughts to us first. Okay, Marilyn.
Yeah. Marilyn.
Beat me to it. Wins the prize.
Marilyn, don't take my ideas, okay? She was listening the whole time,
I'm sure.
This is preschool and pre-K, and because we're preschool, we're like the gateway. We find out
Very early on.
who
Who's gonna need some extra help?
Special needs extra attention. Something that we've incorporated is we have carpet squares, and so we lay out the carpet squares, and then that gives them a place to be and call ownership to. This is your square, this is where you stay, this is where you're gonna do everything, don't get off the carpet square. When we're using instruments or things that they have in their hand, if they become weapons of sorts, then we put the instrument or whatever in timeout. So it's not the child who's being bad, it's the instrument. So your instrument is not
Being a good listener.
being a good listener or acting nicely, so now it has to go in timeout until it can learn to be nice. And then when we determine that the instrument is now going to be nice, then it gets given back to the child.
Can I ask, are all your instruments usually used all the same one?
Yeah, they're all.
So you always-
Yeah, it's like rhythm sticks and stuff like that,
Okay.
Yeah, so.
because they're too little.
So different colors, and then we don't do the color thing. Get what you get, you don't have and then we don't do timeout. We ask, if someone's not cooperating, we say, would you like to take a break? Or would you like to sit out over here for a few minutes until, you can do what the rest of the kids are doing. And then like on presentation time, if a child doesn't want to be on stage for, whatever reason, then we'll say, would you like mom to come up with you? Would you like dad to come up with you? Would that make you more comfortable? And then that way it helps them to get acclimated to being on stage and not being afraid. So far as the parents, we've done the same thing I think that Alicia said. We asked, how can we make this worship less fun for your kid? Sometimes you get good answers, sometimes not. And then, if they're really a challenge, we'll ask the parent to come in with us tonight and see what we do. Maybe you can give us some suggestions. And then we also have in our class the baby whisperer, and that's Olivia. So she's very good with children. I don't know what she says to them when she gets them, but it works.
Sure.
So, she has a special little whisper. And then also, then we for a child that's coming in that's maybe upset, then we'll give them a timeline, okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to go over here, and then we're going to have snack, and then mommy's going to come back. So it gives them something to look for.
Yeah, because there's obviously no time concept.
Yeah, they don't know.
Visual schedules are great.
Yeah, they don't have a concept of time, usually at 3 years old. So I think that was everything, right?
So again, not trying to be critical at all, right?
No, but I think we want Angela to respond, because if we are here to learn.
My kid is gonna roll up in your carpet square, I can tell you that now. Maybe an accommodation would be painter's tape, or a tape to mark a space. Not making them different than anybody else, but
Yeah,
my
but
kid's
that's
gonna
good.
take your carpet square and be doing this, I can tell you right now.
Well, and we have done that, and so, again, it's like,
The
it's
carpet
like,
square goes into timeout.
yeah, the carpet.
Sure, sure. And then with your instruments, maybe have a few that are foam or mock that you can trade out if your instrument's misbehaving, instead of you're losing the whole activity. Maybe you can have an alternate thing to play because yours are being naughty. So instead of leaving out of now you're done, you can't hit anymore, you can't do any more rhythm stick. Often, I know in my classroom I use foam dice because the other ones, they just want to make noise with them. They just want, but that might be a good accommodation in that regard, to have pretend or things made out of pool noodles or something, that some alternative that, hey, if you can't handle that tonight, let me give you this instead, but you're still part of what we're doing. I think the visual schedule is a great idea, at least giving even sometimes, even if it's just the two things, like, we have boards that you can make them as big as you want, but you don't have to use a visual either, you can just, but too many things, they've lost you, that age. Your classroom is gonna have the most motor challenges and bodies that they're trying to figure out still.
Yeah.
With kids with disabilities, usually.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about a kid with physical, cerebral palsy or, some other kind of physical disability that stays with them through life. Most of our autism kids and our ADHD kids are really struggling at a young age to figure that out in that
Yeah,
regard.
and the expectations are sometimes you'll participate, sometimes you won't. Sometimes
Right.
you won't get the movements right, and sometimes you will. You know,
Right.
it's a big range because they're young and old, and a year makes a big difference.
Right, and the idea that you've designated one of your workers that's gonna connect with them specifically, that's gonna always be helpful, especially for a young kid. They feel that attention, they feel the love, they feel, or they feel watched. On the flip side of that, hey, she's watching me, I gotta point it up here. But I think that would be a great way to do that, there's one more thing I was gonna say, I forgot. Like I said, I just think I'm thinking about your materials mostly. How could you give an alternate material to a kid without taking them out of the activity,
Well, it's not entirely used
Sure.
permanently, it's just, they're being, it's not acting right, so we put it in for a few minutes, and then
Sure.
they're looking around like, no, can your instrument act right?
Sure.
To get it right back, so. it's
Right,
not
yeah,
like-
same thing with the other, you can still trade it in and out, yeah. I think those are all really great.
Okay. Anything else for that group, or are you good? Okay, Amy.
So we have 4th and 5th graders.
Okay, and I am very surprised who the spokesperson is for this.
Are you? Listen, I was 3rd string. I was the 3rd choice.
Are you?
Yes, everyone else said no. So.
Wow.
This isn't easy stuff. I mean,
So we talked about how in large group you have expectations of like how they're supposed to act, and how in small group we can have that same, like, these are the expectations of what we're looking for and this is what we're not looking for, and holding them accountable because they are older, and so we have the ability to kind of get their buy-in. We talked about being aware and like making those, like, trying to make the accommodations before we even know we need them. And sometimes that's with a shadow or different things. And we talked about getting their buy-in and letting them participate, like if they are embarrassed or don't know the answer. Like maybe they're the scorekeeper, or they are your helper, or, so they become part of the process and they're not just on the learning end.
unable to do what everyone's
yes,
doing, and not
right.
able to do it, right?
Yeah, they get to
Good
be
stuff.
with you. So we talked about those kinds of things in our small group times.
Yeah, I like the idea of not having class rules per se, and that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. I know that, we already all know this stuff, but it's a good reminder. Try to find as many things as you can to like about that behavior, and make sure you're giving way more deposits than withdrawals. These kids are used to hearing correction on the regular. When you see that behavior you want, go crazy. Even if it's candy or if it's okay with the parents, differential reinforcement, they call it, right? So I'm having this kid sit and he sits for a minute and I give a skill or something. We're not treating a dog, don't hear me. I'm not a fan of this with my kids overall, but then hey, that minute can go to a minute and a half and I'll give another one. And just kind of teaching and shaping, but offering praise. I like the way you're sitting, anything that you see is always gonna go into that little heart bank, but way more than taking those things out all the time, And I like the
Well,
idea
can just say that in large group, it is so helpful to have like my leaders there with.
of walking around so you can do what you're doing, yeah.
And sitting with them and being with them and encouraging them. 'Cause
And if
when
that's
I
on your
see
nerves, then you
that,
can take
it's
turns
like-
doing it. Okay, you're the liker today, you know, like, you know, you get to watch everything you wanna see, you know, happen. I like the idea of having expectations, like, really clear for kids. I think that's gonna help everybody, honestly, not just disabled kids, but.
And I think our tracks in the older groups are so diverse that it's difficult to make a brain lab accommodation that would fit also, you know, and at your servicing or percussion drumming, you know, those kind of, so I think each group you have to kind of think through, you know, what could you do?
I think they had a good point with the drumming though. Do you guys wanna mention that? I mean, I thought that was a good thing to bring up, cause what are we gonna do in that situation?
Well, the first time we rotated tracks. we
Signing
had-
up versus forced rotation. yeah.
Right, so the first forced rotation, we did the drums, and we had a lot of
And
kids.
forced rotation sounds like.
Sorry.
Because we never wanted to go to
Yeah, David was.
Exactly what
Sorry.
we're asking for.
Force, that's no more force rotation.
We noticed we had a lot of kids, they didn't sign up for percussion and drumming, and they were very sensitive to the noise. So for the next set, we did keyboards, so that,
So you just eliminate the sign up thing,
yeah.
if you're gonna do that, where they're not, or, you know, allow that parent
It
to
was
choose.
that was better.
That
We
was
felt like
better,
you got,
yeah.
okay.
Well, and then what she said this time
That's a
around,
modification, too. They
They-
changed the whole
yeah.
activity.
the kids are able to sign up this time.
Right, so it's
So
different.
it is incumbent upon the parent or whoever is helping them sign up to recognize, okay, maybe percussion and drumming is not the best choice for our family this
Sure.
time around. But at least they're getting the choice to choose something else, where in the
Dog petting class would not
rotation,
work for Grace.
they did not have the choice.
I actually know some churches that do therapy dogs as one of their.
Trust me, we see them a lot of stuff in these events. There's a plethora of them.
Yeah, you can sit there.
Yes, we do. It's a sin.
Okay, second, third, or came first?
I'll do ours.
Okay.
We have two examples during large group. We do positive reinforcement with stickers if you're sitting well for an extended time. And to be honest, in kindergarten, basically everybody's gonna get a sticker before we leave the room, but that's the big group thing. In small group, we had an example of a child who, was obviously, had autistic behavior, was a runner, was very sensitive to noise, so we did two things to accommodate. We got, a set of headphones for him to wear for the music. And we also discovered he was pretty disruptive in the classroom at times, but we discovered he had this amazing, uncanny ability as a 5-year-old to read, and I mean read anything, a dictionary, a King James Bible. And so, this sweet little boy Landon, when I realized he had that gift,
She's not talking about my Landon.
we used him to, every day when I brought the Bible story, I would have him come up and read the scripture, which made him the star of the day, and made the other children sit up and look and realize that though he was different, he has a skill set that they don't even have yet. And, so that worked out really good once, but we had to recognize that he had that ability and that gift, and, he was just perfectly comfortable to read whatever scripture I could hand to him right straight out of my Bible. And so, that was just some examples of accommodation that came to mind for us when we were talking about how we dealt with some of the children.
Yeah. I wanted to touch really quickly on positive versus negative reinforcement. Again, this is a little bit backwards, but I really want you to understand because we're trying to stay away from these accidental insensitivity, or accidentally putting a kid in a situation where we didn't intend for them to go. So positive reinforcement, you did something I like, everybody understands that, I reward that. What's negative reinforcement? Let me give you an example. I have a kid walking from the lunchroom to the classroom, he doesn't want to go back in class and throws himself on the ground. So I'm just gonna wait him out. You know, so how am I, that's negatively reinforcing that behavior because he's in a preferred behavior and I'm reinforcing by not making him do anything different. Right, so it's something we have to kind of twist around in our mind as far as how we are reinforcing our kids. You know, I know that sounds kind of a little bit wacky, but I think of another one. I have a kid who is reading at the table but doesn't wanna read, and I'm just gonna sit and wait on him. In that situation, he's in a non-preferred activity, right? And sitting and waiting would be the appropriate part of waiting for, I'm gonna wait, because now you're in a non-preferred. If you get a kid in a preferred, where they're winning in that situation, so you have this kid running around, and I'm gonna ignore, that's maybe negatively reinforcing and saying, hey, that's okay. Even though that's not what you want, you need to do something. You know what I mean? Like, these are the kind of things we have to think about so that we're not sending wrong messages to the kids, you know, especially the older ones, because a lot of their attitude kind of comes into play there, you know, especially in my class. But thinking about these ways where, and then that's where we just stop yourself right there and say, what's the function of this behavior? What are they trying to accomplish with this? You know, is it, we talked about, you know, how do we know when they're choosing versus, you know, they can't help it. And that's, when you start really paying attention, it's not, I'm telling you, you don't have to be a behavior analyst to see that. You know, when it's impulsivity and when it's, hey, I'm looking to see who's watching me. You know, and the impulsive mind isn't even thinking about anyone else. They're not looking around. You know, the child who just wants a reaction is doing that and looking to see who's looking, you know. When you start spending time with these kids, you can see that a little easier. But I do think sometimes we accidentally say, okay, I'm gonna let this kid come in my worship request and just be and do. But I'm negatively reinforcing all that behavior by ignoring it. You know, and that's not really what I want, and that's really hard to undo, you know? So that's why I talk about forethought, having expectations really clear on the front end, finding a way to streamline some of these processes so that you can have good conversations with these parents. You know, because you're gonna have a worse time trying to go backwards than starting how you need to go on in that regard. The kid who came to from another school, he didn't want to wear shoes. You know, I've already had my toe broken this year from a student jumping on a chair at my foot. You gotta wear shoes, man. You're 9 years old. You just gotta do it. So it just took 2 days of every time he took them off. WWE, I'm putting them back on, you know. And 2 days, and then he's like, okay, I give. You know. So, but me letting him have the space, the first day he came, the behavior specialist in my room was like, let's just not choose that battle. He's new, he's nervous. I'm like, yeah, but listen, I already know. Getting them tomorrow to do that, it's gonna be a lot harder than starting how we mean for him to go forward. You know, so I think that's important too. That's why I mentioned forethought and having that opportunity to think ahead. What am I getting myself into here? How do I wanna handle this? I was mentioning to them, getting with your person in your room and saying, hey, this kid's gonna run. Can you watch the door while I do this? And then I'll go watch the door while you do this. You know, and then my kids are really sensitive to touch. I mentioned to someone, like being herded. So for me, it's proximity. If I see this kid get up, I'm gonna put, where's that door? I'm not even gonna alert him that I'm watching, but I know where that door is and I know where he is, you know, kind of thing. So I didn't touch him, I didn't hurt him away, but it's on my mind, you know. I know this stuff isn't easy. I mean, you're all looking at me like, good Lord, you know.
I think touch sensitivity, we run into
Yeah,
that. 'Cause
yeah,
we're
trauma
working
kids a
with
lot of times are
children
just not
who
trusting
are,
of anybody's
you know,
touch.
wanting to move them along or to do something, and our instinct is to reach out, but I think sometimes that has the total other.
Yes, and I do believe that, like I have a kid in my class who's a trauma kid, who's an ASD student. My husband's like, he's a foster kid, he lives in a group home. And he's heavily medicated a lot of times. And my husband's like, oh, don't you feel bad? Gosh, don't you just feel so sorry for him? And I'm like, no, because that's not gonna help him right now. You know, I mean, I'm blurring that line between helping and enabling. When I start feeling, but he can't help it. You know, so I feel like as worship class leaders, trying to let these kids learn about Jesus, bringing them to salvation, we don't have a lot of room to feel bad right now. We want them to hear the truth. It's important. It's an investment, you know, in their future. It matters. Their salvation, their eternal salvation, you know. I think it's blurring the lines between I'm gonna help you and then I'm gonna enable you can get fuzzy, you know.
Okay, second, third grade.
So we kind of bounced around, but everyone had some good input, such as, you know, if you have a child that is maybe empowering them, like giving them something to do as a part of the class. Like maybe they're not getting what everyone else is doing, but they want to be a part. So you have them be your scorekeeper, your whatever. Basically a lot of what everyone else said. The other points that were made were, at the end of the day, we have them for an hour max. So what is our focus? Is our focus getting them to dot their I's and cross their T's?
Choosing your battles, yeah.
Or is our focus for them to learn about Jesus through the Psalms? Experiencing that, being flexible, like if it's not working, going, okay, this is not working, we're gonna do something else. As Miss Linda said, don't keep riding the dead horse. Like get off the dead horse and try something new. And just being open to that. You know, even in large group, like sometimes way I teach the hymns may not be the most sacrilegious way, but we're learning the hymns and we're doing goofy stuff, so just being open to all of that, and then if we know, like, a big question here was, how do we know? Like, we don't know, cause I don't think parents are as forthgiving, because who wants to have your child labeled when they walk into a room? So being alert and tuned to that, because I don't know if a child is sensitive, you know, I didn't even say that right, but y'all know what I mean. Don't touch me, there you go. But if someone knows something, or if someone sees something, like if, with Kristen being in the school system, being able to say, wait a minute, I don't think that child wants to be touched, oh, thank you so much. But if we're all invested in large group time, and I'm so thankful that these leaders sit among the kids.
Right.
They're not standing along the back wall, they are in amongst them, and they can see things before I even see them.
That's the two things I was gonna mention. One, it goes back to what I was telling you guys about that whole bowling ball and the bumpers, like, oops, not that way, oops, not that way. But then, the fact that we are a committed group of people that trust a sovereign God, that plans these lives and these moments and these opportunities with these kids, if we trust and believe that we will get the kids that we're meant to have, that are meant to have us, then God will give us the tools and equip us to do it. I'm telling you, there's lots of weirdo sayings in the special needs realm, you know, God only gives special kids to special people. Well, how does that make y'all feel who don't have special kids? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of little silly sayings like that, but I'm telling you, there's nothing better, nothing more productive, you know, despite disruption, than a group of people committed and to loving these kids the way that God made them, exactly the way they are. You know, not trying to change the truth, not trying to change the message, but really learning how to love them and realize that they need people like us in their lives. You know, so I love the commitment to trusting God's sovereignty and knowing exactly what we need right when we need it. And you maybe have that worker in your room that works at the school system and saw this before. Or, hey, I work with someone in my worship quest that is a behavioral health person or a psychologist, or hey, you know what? I don't know what to do. Can I go ask somebody? Because, you know, seriously, I don't know what. And let's do that. Let's be open with each other. Hey, can we bounce off ideas? Like, what did you give me some help here? This kid's making me nuts. I can't get nothing done. Because I have days like that too. Totally. I can't do anything. Everything I say is everything's a joke. Blah, blah, blah. And when you're having that minute, take that minute. Ask God to recenter, refocus your heart. You know, it is an hour a week. You know.
Well, and Linda brought up a good point. She said, why not take the time to, hey, can I talk to you? Want to walk with me to the water fountain? And ask the child what's wrong.
Sure.
Not assume, oh, you must be having a bad day. Maybe they didn't eat dinner. Maybe they came straight from school. So just
one of the phrases I use is, hey, your body is telling me that you're not really happy right now. Is that how you feel? Like, I'm not blaming you, I'm just telling you what I see. Your body says or hey, your body's really happy. If you're not really happy, I don't really know what's going on. Because, you know, this kid we do our check-in in the morning, and he likes to hit the mad emoji every time. And your face is smiling, your body's telling me that you're happy. What's going on here? But giving them an opportunity, yeah.
I thought of something I didn't say here at the table, but I think bringing the parents in at the end when they're picking them up is a big deal too, to let them know that, oh, she had a really good night. She was singing, and she really
Sure.
it seemed like she was enjoying playing that instrument.
Sure.
And just letting them in. I think it.
There is
means a lot
nothing
more
that
to
thrills the
someone
heart of a
like-
parent more to know that their kid is included.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you've been on that end of it where there's not a place. You know, there's nothing that's gonna do more ministry in your heart as a parent than feeling like, hey, they love my kid like God loves my kid. Yeah. You know, look, again, it's not easy. I know it's not easy. We have a lot of things to figure out, but I know that if we commit to do it together, give it the forethought, give it the respect, give God the sovereignty, and say, hey, you know what's going on. We don't. You know, I think we can do this together for real. I think that more kids will have opportunities to hear about Jesus. Yes.
I think one of the things that, and I've heard here, and I've heard in the other thing, that the other groups talking, it's so important to remember relationship makes a difference.
Mhm.
We're not doing worship quest to the kids. We want them engaged. They want to feel wanted and needed, and you can only do that when you have relationship. And so, you know, touching base with the kids, touching base with the groups, remembering they may have come from school, their medications may have worn off. They may not have had food to eat, you know, their mother may have rushed them or given them junk food, so they're sugared up. But, you know, touching base, if something is not working with the kid, have one of your leaders be willing to form relationship with the kid, take them for a walk, say, is everything okay, how are you doing, how are you feeling, you know, or whatever. You're not a therapist, but you can form a relationship. How do you do that? By communicating.
And that's something I think we can help too with, once we kind of get a process maybe in place in that regard. One more thing I wanna say and then I'm done. One of the things that, I've heard a lot over the years is, if I'm gonna be giving so much attention to these special kids, you know, what about everybody else? You know, like, I mean, I'm gonna be so focused on this, what about everyone else? And that's where I just really want you to, again, challenge your mind, challenge your thinking about where the root of that is. Cause that automatically in my mind, I hear separation. Them and them. I'm giving so much over here, over there, instead of all one. So that's just what I wanna leave you with. I know, yes, as a teacher, I'm sure Caitlin, if Kevin's in the same thing, where you have that one kid that's whack-a-mole, and you're always gonna be putting that kid down. All right, again, this one, I have 25 other kids here, you know, what am I gonna do? And yeah, it's reality, but again, just making sure that we challenge our thinking that way and ask God to help us with that, because we can't do it on our own.
Lots of good stuff, thank you.
Sorry.
The great thing to remember, like she was talking about bouncing ideas off, is we have resources. I mean, we really are blessed.
Dina's a
We're
great resource.
Blessed to have Dina Troyer, we're blessed to have Angela, we're blessed to have each other. So really, that is what we need to be doing, is to do that. So I know that we've kept you all for a really long time. If I could ask for 10 more minutes, if you meet in your group.